And I think it's also important to remember or to realize that sometimes the questioner isn't supposed to be given a date or a time. And so people ask questions, but they're not always going to get, and they're not always supposed to get answers to their questions. But sometimes your ego can interfere. So let's say somebody says, when is it going to happen? And you want to prove that you know how to read cards. And so you might think, well, okay, I'm going to give them a date. And then it works out to be a correct date, and you feel, great because you gave them a correct forecast. You have to watch out, however, I think, because if you let your ego control things in this way, it's sort of asking for trouble. And it may work a few times, but it is kind of, if your ego's getting in the way, then, it's not a good thing. And it reminds me of something that I could and maybe should have added in the video about how to prepare for reading. Because let's say the questioner pays you $5 for reading, and you give them the answer, but they don't like it, and they're not happy. And you think, what am I going to do? They weren't happy with the reading. Or maybe you feel, the reader, feel that I really didn't understand what the reading was about, and I could have done a better job. And you think that a week later, you realise you could have done a better job. So what do? If they say, I'm not happy with that, what do you say? What you say is, well, too bad. Or you say that as politely as possible, because you certainly don't give them money back. Because if they weren't happy, you keep the cash. Because sometimes people aren't meant to get help. You know what I mean? And they're better off figuring out their own solutions. And so they paid you, but they can't change their mind if they don't like the answer. If they didn't want to know the answer, they shouldn't have asked the question in the first place. And so that's something to remember, that everybody doesn't always get a good reading, and that's just the way things are. But you trying to make everybody have a good reading in the sense of giving them answers they want to hear, that's your ego getting in the way. And the point is that you are not God. It's not up to you to decide if the person is going to get an acceptable answer. So if they don't like it, too bad, you move on. So it's like you have to respect the questioner. And another point to make is that sometimes the questioner knows that it's not really in his or her best interest to know the date, for instance, even though they seem to want to know. And so sometimes if you give them a date, you're not really helping. So what are we going to do if we want to give dates? And here are some ideas. You can set up a time frame with the question as part of the question. So you could ask, what's going to happen in the next 6 months? And so if there's a meeting shows up, it's going to happen sometime before the 6 months are up. Or let's say it's March, and we've got somebody, and the question is, what's going to happen between now and Christmas? And so if there's a new job, when am I going to get the new job? Between now and Christmas, because that's what you asked. Okay, so that's one way of dealing with time. Set a time frame at the beginning, and you know that what is shown in the spread is going to happen between now and the end date that you've determined. You can always make use of upright and reverse cards. Upright meaning yes, and upside down meaning no. So you can ask, I don't know, I can't think of a quick, I don't want to keep saying, well, whatever happened, but let's say somebody wants to know, are they going to get a job offer, let's say. Is it going to happen within 1 week? And you choose, and no, not within 1 week because the card is upside down. Within 2 weeks? No. Within 3 weeks? The Ace of Wands. So yes, you're going to get the job offer within 3 weeks. And that's one way of helping people to understand the time period when whatever it is that they want is going to come about. So we could have got that. This could be in the first card. And instead of weeks, you might, depending on the question, sometimes it makes more sense to ask about days. Let's say somebody hasn't heard from a friend for a long time, and whereas normally the friend calls every week and they haven't heard from them, is he or she going to call within 1 day? or within 2 days, or within 3 days. Or it could be you're expecting a letter, which normally you get once a month. So is it going to happen within 1 week, within 2 weeks, within 3 weeks? If the card is upright, it means yes. If it's upside down, it means no. And so again, you're giving the person a rough idea of when the thing is likely to come about. So sometimes I've done this at times, and I keep picking a card within 1 day, within 1 week can I get this reversed, within 2 weeks, within 3 weeks, within 4 weeks, within 5 weeks, and all these cards are reversed. I'm thinking, I've got to stop asking this, because obviously something is going on and I'm not going to get an answer. And even if I do get an answer after 15 cards, is it going to happen within 15 weeks? It's sort of telling you something. If you keep getting a lot of no's one after the other, leave it alone, because it may well be that giving the person a date or giving them a time period is not really to their advantage or to their benefit. And so the other thing is there are numbers on cards. The Ace of Wands, the Seven of Cups, the Eight of Cups. Okay, that's 1, that's 7, that's 8. So you could ask, how many days am I going to have to wait before I get an answer? 8 days. How many days? A week. 7 cups, 7 days. Or else, if it makes more sense to be weeks or months or whatever, then you can choose a card, and depending on the number on the card, that's the number of days or weeks or hours, depending on what the question is. The other thing is you could get a major trump. So how many weeks? The Empress is number 3, so within 3 weeks. But you could take all 21 major trumps and divide them into 7s. So if you get something, if you get between the Fool card and the Chariot, which is 0 to 7, that's like the beginning. So the answer would be that if you get one of these cards, instead of being 3 weeks, you could adjust it and say that it's going to happen soon or quite soon. Whereas if you get a major trump, there's 14 that falls in the middle portion of the 21 major trumps. That's sort of, okay, it'll happen, but you're going to have to wait for a bit. It's not going to happen right away, but it's also not many months away. You're sort of in the middle of the waiting period, but you're not at the beginning of the end. So again, you're giving them a rough idea of when it's going to happen. And if you get the star, 17, it's towards the end. So this thing that you want is not just around the corner. So you should probably forget about it for the time being and concentrate on what you can do right now. So you put yourself in a better condition to benefit when the star does happen.